sport fans watching around the world. This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Let's get straight into the episode.
Yeah, we heading for the sun. Shawty got my high, I ain't tripping for the funds. Yeah, I won't start, I ain't tripping, I'm a stun.
Alright, y'all, today's a Monday and Mondays are for Docs. Thank you for clicking or tapping and let's start today's spew. Guys, you know who it is. You've read the title of the intro. I'm very happy to be welcoming to the Doxcast for the very first time, Aaron Huey.
Hi, brother. Thank you very much for having me on.
Beautiful. We had to get the podcast started because we were just going to keep talking. We already went conspiracies.
Always the way.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good. It means it's good chemistry. That means it's a good start.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll tell you what, I have a big list of stuff. I said to you, I've just notes and things I've gone down. I mentioned I watched a couple other podcasts you've been on, so I'll constantly refer back to this just because I don't want to forget anything, you know? Like,
perfect.
I watch things and I'm like, oh.
I like the setup that you have that there because it means that like things will go to...
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if all the power dies, there's nothing we can do about that. But yeah, the fact that you've actually got the setup for the lights and for the camera and for everything, I like that idea.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so I feel like I kind of got to know you a little bit in general going through your podcast. It's a little bit of a weird feeling sitting down with someone like, oh, yeah, I know a bit about you. You might not know too much about me. I won't put words into your mouth yet, though, and describe you. I'll let you describe who you are, just for anyone on my channel who hasn't had any information yet. But what about just a little bit about yourself and what you do with yourself?
Yep. Okay. So as you can hear from the accent, I'm not from these parts. Originally from Scotland. Well, that was the last place that I lived. I moved around the world a little bit. My dad was in the British Army, so I was born and raised in Germany, and then lived in England, lived in Scotland, and then I've been in Australia for the past 13 years.
Yeah.
Love it here. This is home now. I grew up watching Neighbours and Home and Away, so for me, the sun in the sand, it sold me. Carpenter by trade. I left school when I was 16 to do a trade. I didn't really know. Didn't want to go to uni, didn't want to work in an office, just wanted to work with my hands and build something. So yeah, I have done that back home and here. More so here being in kind of upper management, so site manager, site foreman. Now completely off the tools other than working in people's houses or helping friends, because my main passion / now job is coach to tradies. So helping men in construction with their wellness, their mental health, predominantly through personal development. And the main reason is that because I found personal development helped me when I had some mental health challenges, and I see that as kind of the missing link to where a lot of people are in their life. Like the suicide statistics in the construction industry are like almost, we lose 2 guys a day, give or take.
Well,
no one can really give me a proper answer as to why our men do that. However, I do believe the missing link is personal development, and knowing a bit more about yourself, and having more growth mindset, goals, a bigger outlook on life rather than just getting to Friday and going to the pub. So it's a hard nut to crack, especially in that industry. However, conversations progressing a lot more. Having podcasts like this, and I've got a few presentations and a few big things coming up. It's moving towards where I think it should be. There's a lot of HR fluff in the industry, and that's probably in most industries when it comes to mental health and wellness. This is what you should do, and these are what you do if and when it happens, which I think is bullshit. Yeah. I think I'm a firm believer that we should, instead of it being rehabilitation, it should be pre-habilitation, helping the guys before they get to the point of when, there's lots of services out there for helping their mental health. So I just think if I could get to the guys a couple of years before they need to pick up the phone and call, Lifeline or Mates in Construction or somebody from a suicide perspective, I think the world would be a better place, let's say, for men, for families, for kids. There's a whole myriad of reasons. So that's kind of, in a small nutshell, what I am and who I am and what I'm doing now. Yeah,
nice. That's a great way to wrap that up too. I couldn't have done it any better myself, and I feel like I just watched you for hours online talking on podcasts.
What I find is when people ask me that, I just go straight into my life and I start ranting, and I'm now consciously stopping at points because I know it will come out in the podcast, so I don't want to kill the podcast in the first 5 minutes.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, 2 guys a day is in construction is huge. I learned this stat from you. I think it's 9 people a day in Australia die from suicide.
Yeah, so nine a day in Australia, 7 are men, and out of those 7, 53% are in construction.
Yeah.
That was the stats as of 22, 23. I don't know what they are now. However, I don't think they will have come down, if anything.
Yeah.
It just, I didn't get into this space because of suicide. It was never on my radar. I solely got into this just because I'd found a few things with my own coaching and starting to coach people that was helping me on site, be able to regulate myself and be able to deal with things better. And I thought, no one has ever taught me this on a construction site, or no one's ever spoken about this personal development stuff. I thought, I can't be the only one. So I started asking the question, what was out there for our guys, and short of just suicide prevention courses and the odd "Are you okay?" there's really nothing in the industry.
Yeah, I've noticed that myself too. There is, and I like the way you said pre-habilitation, because I kind of think, I look at it the way we take multivitamins. I try and take them. I'm not the best at them, I try. But it's not to help you get better. It's to prevent you from getting sick in the first place, which is a massive misconception in general.
I think that's definitely a shift that we all could probably do with our lives, not just mental health, like you say, with vitamins, with everything. It shouldn't wait until you get to a point where you have to fix yourself, which is, as men, we're great at doing that. Like, we'll wait to the very end before we go to the doctor, or we'll wait until we have like a crunch point in our life where we think, oh, maybe I should do something. It's like, no, maybe start now, and then it'll either never happen, which is great, or when it does happen, then at least you know what to expect, how to handle it, how to move forward from it. But yeah, you're definitely right. We could do with looking after ourselves and a myriad of things rather than just waiting on the unfortunateness happening.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to leave this completely one-sided. I thought I'd also share why it was incisive for me to get you to come onto the podcast, because I found it resonating having someone who has the voice for mental awareness in the field of construction, because I work in construction myself. Okay. I've been doing refrigeration for 9 years, I guess almost 10. I'm counting down the days until long service. Pretty keen for that. But I understand I'm only 25, so I still look at the world like it's enormous, and I might have a lot of ego and think I've got everything pretty figured out, but every, let's call it 5 hours, I get a big reminder like I got no idea what's going on either.
That is one of the two falls that I have when I wanted to get into this. The first one was teach the old boys that just because it's the way it was doesn't mean that it works. Like, the whole teach the old dog new tricks type thing. Like, I when I do start a site talk, I normally say we all know grumpy tradie, and if we don't know grumpy tradie, that means you're the one. Normally gets a laugh, but there's not. Normally, most people know one old miserable fucker who's like on site, and they either don't have a family, they go home to a 6-pack and a dog, and it's to teach those lads that it doesn't have to be that way. Like, the amount of times I hear, I don't know any different, or I'm too. If you don't like your job, change it. And if you're not going to change your job, change your mindset. And that's what I found. So one fold is to try and help the older guys. And the second one is to help the younger lads, like yourself and younger, that when they start out as apprentices or young trades, you feel invincible. We all did. We were all there. Yeah. I remember being the exact same. Yeah. However, once you start your own business or you start having a family and all these stressors get added onto your daily life, here's the things that I learned the hard way. Other people have taught me, or I now know this might help you, because nobody talks about this. Like, when you do your apprenticeship, you get your skills, how to do the job, and then the rest of it you just learn on your way. So if I can impart some knowledge onto the younger guys so that they don't go down the dark track that I went through with when it comes to taking work frustrations home, drink, drugs, gambling, all of those things that, if you're on a construction site, at least one person who has that issue. Mm-hmm. So they were the twofold that I wanted to kind of give back to, because, the old boys, you can either help them change or they are what they are. But the young lads, I feel if we can help them be better tradesmen, be better men, husbands, then we can help the next generation who can deal with the shit that, because it's a hard job being a tradie. Like, I don't care what anyone says. Like, it's some trades have got it easier than others. Electricians, if you're listening.
They always take the wrong end of the stick. You just have to, yeah.
It's funny. I think it was the Trade Mutt page. They've got a page on Facebook, and they put up a thing the other day, and it was like, what's the greatest trade? What's the greatest trade? And there was everyone, and it came down to the last two were carpenters and electricians. And the electricians were like us. And I said, well, look, I didn't hear any of the electricians being in the Bible. That's all I'm saying. And it was like, they all came underneath. So
nice.
It's good, but yeah, it's not it's a great industry to be in. And it's also a really shitty industry to be in if you've got bad toxic environment around about you. And that probably goes for most things. However, being in the industry, because one, you're using your body as a tool. You're up early, you're doing long hours, dirty, clean. Like, it's not always the cleanest. If you're lucky enough to work for somebody who pays you weekly, you're fine. But if you work for yourself, it's the slog of going week to week. So there's a whole myriad of reasons that can make it bad. But all in all, it's a pretty good industry to be in.
Yeah. Well, I got to be honest. I don't do anything unless I want to do it. I'm pretty stubborn, I guess, in a way. Luckily, I want to do things I do things for a reason that I want to get better at it. Like, I understand the bigger picture. That's why I do things. And if construction wasn't a good industry, there's no chance I'd be doing it. I'd pick someone else to do. I honestly love the trade in refrigeration in general. I love building and constructing anything. I understand why so many people do it, but having a number as high as 2 people a day just inside the field of construction who commit suicide has to be leagues above every other industry. Has to be leagues above.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with many statistics. I only learned that 9 people die from suicide a day from listening to things that you've said online. And that's why I've been very interested, and I've kind of gone through a little bit of a rabbit hole lately because I have had a bit of ideas growing up of things that I think could improve, and I wouldn't mind going over a couple of things with you, whether it be towards the end of the podcast or even after the podcast or whatever we have time to do today. But I was curious, what got you started on because I know you were doing coaching and stuff beforehand, but what helped push it to become, and how long ago did it become mostly focused on mental health inside the construction in general?
So it was probably the end of 2021. So I started this back in November 2019 is when I did my coaching course. And I did the course solely because I found that, so to take it back a little bit further, I had 2 friends pass away, one back home in Scotland and one here. And that was my first kind of venture into having bad mental health and struggling with being able to control my anger and my anxiety and all of that stuff. And I went down the normal route of going and getting a mental health plan from the doctor, got medication, got psychologist, I think it was psychologist, and did about 8 sessions with him. And it helped, but I just thought I'd like to do more. Like, I'd kind of like to progress a little bit more. So I went down, I started listening to, Tony Robbins books and reading Tony Robbins books and listening to some audibles on personal development and doing, more for yourself and just having that reach. So, and then I think it was the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival in the city at the ICC. There was a personal development company there just giving out their flyers, and they gave us, it was like a free seminar. You could go to theirs and see what they do. So I went to there, and I like what the guy was able to do on stage, like the main coach, how he was able to help. And I was looking for something different at the time. Like, I was still a tradie, but I'd done like personal development. I'd done network marketing and affiliate marketing, and the affiliate marketing crowd that I was with, they were big on personal development too. So it was all around at the one point. And I did their course. They asked me to be one of their coaches. So I did that for about a year, just helping their clients from 2000 up until 2021. Just working with anyone who wanted, life coaching or who wanted to better themselves. And then I was on a retreat myself, like a coaching retreat for me, and one of the coaches said, like, what's the goal? Like, what do you want to do? And I said, I just want to give back to, who do you want to give back to? There's the whole niching down process when you're trying to find a coaching business. And I was like, I'd like to maybe help tradies, people, pretty much me. So, people who've got a young family, they're trades, they're struggling. And she was like, is there anybody else out there doing that? I was like, no. She's like, well, there you go. That's what you need to be. She's like, you need to, if that's what you feel most pulled to do, then then there's your people. Like, you know them inside out. You've been in the industry for, at this point it was only like 15, 16 years. Go for it, do that. So I did. I turned everything around to just focusing on mental health and construction and looking at the things that I had seen and done and the lack of. Picked up the phone and called master builders and said, look, what's out there for our guys? I haven't seen much. And, they told me about mates in construction who do suicide prevention courses and some antidepressant talks and the old Are You OK Day. And I was like, that's a fucking huge gap. Like, you've either you're depressed or you want to take your own life. I'm like, there's nothing in between. So that was then I decided, like, right, I'm gonna fill that void, because one, it's hard enough to get men to open up about what's going on for them. Tradies have got like a Teflon skin, and I figured that if I was going to get through to, if anyone was going to get through to them, it was somebody who'd been there, walk the walk, talk the talk, because I kept hearing, like I would go out to sites and there would be like someone from some uni student would come out with a mental health degree and just they don't resonate with trades. Like it just doesn't. They just see them a mile away.
You always see them too. They're coming when they're coming. And to be honest, it doesn't matter what they said. You wouldn't really want to listen to them in my experience. Yeah.
And being from a trade background and also probably being from the UK, my language can be quite foul. So that actually resonates when you're trying to get a point across, because although it can be quite a somber topic, talking about men's mental health and suicide awareness. I think if you can turn it around with either some humor, speak the language that they know. That like when I do my talks, it's pretty much I focus on three things. It's tune in, check up, and reach out. It's very basic, very simple. It gets the point across. At the end of the day, we're tradesmen. We don't need anything to be too elaborate. We just need to be told. And I found that it worked. Like I had sites of like 50, 60 men all listening to me, and a message would get across at the end. Most of them would go away. A few would come up and say, that's great, really liked what you said. A few points hit home. And then I just started to have more and more conversations and just show up in places, and more people wanted to talk about it. And it's amazing the people who you can actually stop and have a conversation with. And I always kind of put it into bring it into conversation. Like the coach who said to me, like, if that's who you want to do, you need to be the face of it. Like everything you talk about has to be men's, so that when people either know somebody who's having issues or somebody's having issues yourself, you're the first person that they think about because they know you're there with the services to help them. So I always bring it up in conversation, and it's amazing the people I've spoken to, like, skip bin drivers who are like, the whole fully set, tattooed, head to toe, like gold chain. You wouldn't think they'd open up about it, but as soon as you mention it and just start having a conversation, then they open up about what's going on for them in their life. Wow. Right down to some site managers who I used to be one of them. I used to be an angry little fucker shouting, screaming at everyone on site. But if you start actually talking to them, they're like, yeah, what, this is needed in the industry. I know I've been there myself sometimes, and it's like everybody has. It's just continuing the conversation, and I now take that and pretty much preach it. Like, this is what I did the hard way. This is what I've learned. If I can give this back, these are the things I've learned. These are the things I used to do. These are the things I now do. These are things I didn't even know that I was doing that I've learned. If you're doing these, it doesn't have to be that way. And so many people, it's amazing the amount of people who will actually see, listen, and like, but won't interact. Or you reach out to them and say, how are you? Do you need, do you want to chat? And they still say no. I think that's just a man thing. We're very good at putting things off. However, I'd like to try and change that for men, for them, their wives, their kids, because at the end of the day, the longer you put it off, the harder it is to fix. Well,
I couldn't agree with you anymore on so many points. I find that myself, when I'm ever talking to someone, I put little dot points in and have to try and go through and pick them out, one by one. The first one that I picked upon was the relation that you have with the traders on site, because you have the experience and also going through the hard times yourself. I also suffered the loss of my best mate to suicide around about the 3.5 year ago mark now. Sorry. I'm not very good with death, dates and stuff like that. I appreciate that, but I'd rather just not know the dates and things like that for anything. So but it taught me a lot, and it did change my life in a complete way as well. To be honest, I think a lot of my mates would consider myself to be someone that they can count on, and I do find myself checking up as much as I try to consciously. I'm not always doing it as much as I think I could be, but that all come from response to the grief in the first place, you know, not wanting to go through that again.
Yeah.
And again, it was the relation that I can now have with other people when they're going through similar things, where it's like, there's an amazing quote I love called, and it says, empathy is the output for the input that is trauma. So
Say that again, empathy.
Empathy is the output for the input that is trauma. So you're never going to be able to resonate with anyone going through any hard times until you've gone through those hard times yourself.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Which is why it's a great thing to have you as the face of it, if you can come to the acknowledgement of the fact that you've gone through hard times yourself, you know. So it's like, yeah, I've been there. We don't know. We all go through it, because it's funny when you're younger, especially because I feel like I went through it a bit more when I was maybe about late teenagehood, you know, the whole depression, anxiety side of things. And I have little bits of it here and there, but I've got a bit more tools to deal with it. But you think you're the only person in the world who's gone through it.
It's amazing the amount of people, even now to this day, with the amount of, you know, podcasts that are out there and the amount of footage and the amount of news articles and everything that's out there about people saying that. It's amazing the amount of people who still think that they are the only ones suffering, and they suffer in silence. Like, it's crazy. It's
crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
It must just be like I'd love to sit down with a psychologist or somebody actually who knows and can understand the human mind, or at least the male human mind, because it's different to females, but why we do that, why we go insular and just think it's us, and just head down, ass up, we'll just go with it and we'll work. And that's something I did. Thankfully, I didn't go down the route of drugs or alcohol or gambling, which most people do, and but I now know why people do that, because it fills the void of something. But yeah, I was like you. Growing up, you know, I grew up in a pretty rough part of Scotland. There was a lot of stuff going on with drink, drugs, you know, quite a rough place with police and fighting. But I just took it as where I grew up. I moved on, and I moved out, got my own place, started working, and I've always wanted to come travelling, so it never fazed me to kind of leave the earth, leave back home to come travelling. But yeah, it really wasn't until 2 mates passed, it really hit me. Things just felt like they were falling apart. And thankfully it was my wife at the time. She has her own struggles throughout the years, so she knew what the symptoms, and she, you know, pretty much pointed them out to me. But like, you know, like most men, I put it off as long as possible. And then I was like, you know what, you're right. Like, I was coming home and blowing up at her and the kids for no reason. Like I say, I was just frustrated with everything and everyone on site, and just felt like I couldn't think straight. Like, I call it the grey, because it felt like on the days where things were really bad, I just couldn't even would do things like drive home from the city, like work in the city, get home and be like, how the fuck did I get here? I don't even remember driving, and like things like that. So it's amazing how you think you've got it all together, but actually you don't, or you're just on like survival mode, just getting through it.
Yeah.
And I think I think now, because it's more of a conversation, more people are aware of that, for good or for bad. I think there's a lot of people who use that as a crutch. Like, that's my one fear with mental health, that a lot of people are going to use like their mental health days, and they're going to use it as a crutch just because they're either lazy fuckers or they just don't want to face the world. You know, we're definitely, especially in our young lads as well, we're definitely lacking a little bit of resilience when it comes to just getting on with it, especially in construction. I see that quite now. There's a reason like the apprentice rate is so bad. Like, I think it's like less than or just over 50% of apprentices complete their apprenticeship, and I think a lot of it's got to do with just buckling down and getting on with it. Yeah, definitely. I think that I guess every generation says this, where they say like, this is the last generation of people who are going to make it, but I haven't even seen a young guy in our trade other than someone who's been forced upon by their older sibling, which is like my little brother. I forced him to get into the trade. It's normally the way, a dad, a brother, an uncle.
I think everyone at our company who's started as an apprenticeship now is only doing it because their older brother forcing them to do it. And then I'm looking around at all the people I know who are younger, not really any of them are getting apprenticeships anymore.
It's a massive reason why they're a huge push for women to get into construction, because there is a huge void. And it's great to see so many women getting put into construction and actually wanting to get into construction. However, I do think the way that they're going about it right now is overshadowing for the younger lads trying to get into it. And it's Some people will probably come for me for that, but it's just how I say it, how I see it. And there's all of this celebration of women in construction and empowering women in construction, but there's nothing for men. There's nothing for guys. And when we look at the suicide rate and the apprentice not completion rate for men, it tells us that we're not doing something. So while we have this elevation of the women in construction, which is great for them, however, we need to pay more attention. Yeah, I think there's this big jump of equality and equity. We don't have that with celebrating our male and female trades, which is unfortunate. However, there's a few places, and I'm hopefully going to be one of them, that help solve that problem.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
maybe highlight more funding for that problem, because unfortunately with the government, they jump on a buzzword and throw all of their funding at that, and I've certainly seen that when I've tried to apply for grants for male trades related programs or grants for things that they've just been, no, we don't have any money for that. However, if you want to have a women's in construction program, here's 200 grand or whatever. So for the women, it's great. However, I definitely think we need to be giving more support for our young lads, because as you say, a lot of them just don't want to go into it. And I think that's because of the age that we live in. You know, we've got all these TikTok stars and YouTube stars, and, you know, people making all of this money online. However, I think a lot of these young lads don't see all of the miles that were put behind that. They think they're just going to be Instagram famous quick.
Yeah.
And I actually did a talk at Tafe back last November, and one of the teachers said, like, how can I keep my guys engaged? How can I keep them coming in? You know, exactly what I just said. It's like they either don't come in or, you know, they think they're going to go elsewhere. I'm like, just tell them it's 4 years. Like, it's 4 years of your life. Get a trade. Like, it's good money. You know, you'll learn some skills. Get your trade ticket. If you never use it, you never use it. Go on and do whatever. However, it'll always be something you fall back on. It'll take you around the world. Like, my trade ticket is the only reason I was able to stay in Australia. I got sponsored to stay as a carpenter, and then I got permanent residency. Like, without that, I don't have any other skills that would keep me here. So that's what I said to them. I was like, just put it across to them. It's 4 years of their life.
Yeah.
If they can get through, if they really hate it that much, and it's only 4 years of their life. However, probably find once they get past the second or the third year, like you, they'll actually find that they actually enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot more people being pushed into it from a sibling or a father figure into getting it, and I've seen that a lot. That's definitely something that's resonating more.
Yeah, and I get it. It's not until you start becoming good at something that you start to enjoy it. I definitely didn't necessarily enjoy it for about closer to the 12-month period into doing my apprenticeship, where I started to think to myself, I thought it was interesting for a duration in general, but it wasn't until I started to develop the skills in which I was able to do things on my own, in which I was like, now I see.
Exact
and now
same.
it's just as fast as I can get to number one. That's
Yep.
my goal in my trade, is I'm trying to be the best.
Yep.
I'm always trying to tell every fridgie I meet, like, oh, well, I'm going to be better than you.
Yeah.
You know? yeah.
It's good. You have to have a little bit of rivalry. Like, that's what that kind of playful banter, that's what we need in the industry, and that's what's getting construed between bullying, harassment, and banter. Like, I'm a huge advocate for, like, fuck, when I was an apprentice, I got shot to the floor with, like, through my nail gun, like, through my boots. Like, I've been pushed down halls, like, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't see that as being harassment. Like, it's just, you need to have a thick skin in a thick industry. You need to have a hard skin in a hard industry. Because at the end of the day, to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go out to work, you know, up in the attic spaces, you know, digging, it's a lot. That's not something that you do because you love it. You do it just because you need to do it.
Yeah.
But I was like you. I remember being a second or third year apprentice and telling my dad I wanted to quit. My dad was like, just stick through it. And same thing. What I think the kids these days, they think that, you know, I've heard a lot about, we need to pay our apprentices more, and, you know, they'd stay if they had more money, and they're getting. I'm like, it's an education. You don't get paid to go to uni. It's not until your uni's finished then you start making money. An apprenticeship's the exact same. Like, the 4 years of your apprenticeship is where you learn the skills. You don't actually start utilizing those skills until you're a tradesperson. So they need to, the newer generation need to realize that. Like, you're not, I get it, some people use them for paid labor, which is shitty. Like, that's a definite thing that we need to cut out. However, the apprentices need to realize that, like, I had 3 jobs when I was an apprentice. I worked in our equivalent of Bunnings back home called B&Q. I was a DJ. I would deliver leaflets. Like I had about 3 or 4 jobs because my apprenticeship wage was like $50.
Yeah.
It was nothing. It's like that's what you have to do as an apprentice because you're not getting paid to learn. Like you're paying for an education and a skill. And then, like, realistically, until you hit the ground running yourself, that's when you start learning things. And if you don't learn them the hard way, you never will.
Yeah, it's only when you get thrown in the deep end.
The amount of times you pipe something wrong and it starts leaking, you're like, fuck, what do I need to do? Or the amount of times I've, like, hung doors upside down or, shot into the wall or hanging something on the wall and there's a cable behind or a pipe. They're all part of, you don't get them in Tafe.
Yeah.
Like, they're all things that you need to learn out. So, yeah, I definitely think our lads could do a gentle kick up the arse to get on with it. But there's a different world now. They've got a lot more opportunities to make money elsewhere from the comfort of a laptop or their phone, and good on them. However, when the lights go out and AI comes for you, they're not going to be able to replace our jobs when it comes to building things. That's one thing I'll stick by.
It's always going to be stable having a trade. I'm an advocate too. I try and tell every mate I can get a trade first, then do anything you want to do. I'm even in the mindset where it's like I love doing what I'm doing, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do it forever. No. I can have an exit plan. I can have a completely different change in career after this. So I agree with you there. Coming back to, and we'll always go down side tracks every time a new conversation point comes up, but coming down to the big issue we have in the construction industry and why it's so high, I'm curious as to why do you think that construction suffers such a higher level of mental state down before compared to many other industries?
I think it just comes down to it's a tough industry where the guys are just, you got to toughen up and get on with it. And what that leads to is guys not opening up to what's going on for them. Just burying it down inside constantly. And then when those feelings do arrive, they either work themselves. Like if something's going on at home with the missus, they'll stay at work longer or they'll do extra hours rather than actually fix it. And that just compounds. Or, if they've got money issues, they'll just work extra to get, rather than actually understanding why they've got issues at home or why they feel the way that they feel. I think because men for so long have been told not to feel their feelings in an industry where it's a tough industry, you've got to just toughen up and get on with it. Not only from a physical perspective, but from a mental perspective. I think that breeds men who will work hard days. They'll have aches and pains, so they'll go to the pub, they'll have a few beers, and that'll ease the pains. And then, it's the social side of being there, and the 4 or 5 beers lead to 6, and then, you feel shitty the next day, so then it's like a revolve, you just keep doing it. Add on top of that money. No, as an apprentice, as a tradesman, unless you have a really good coach or a father figure, nobody teaches you how to deal with money. Like, it wasn't until I did my coaching course 2 or 3 years ago, I learned so much things about, how to properly save money and how to divvy money in the right spots. And, if I'd learned some things 10 years ago to what I know now, I'd probably be set up different. But nobody teaches you that. Like, from a trade perspective, from a business perspective, you're not taught that in trade school. So I think they're some of the figures, some of the things that they just build and build and build. And with most trades, they're either working week to week or, they're constantly chasing money. They feel that they don't have time to actually sit down and deal with those things. So they're just constantly chasing themselves. And what will inevitably happen, it'll catch up with them. And they'll either have a relationship breakdown or they'll have a health breakdown or they'll have a mental health breakdown. And I solely think it's just because if the guys knew a little bit more about themselves, why they do the things they do, good or bad. Like a lot of guys don't know the habits that they have aren't actually their habits. They're just people who they've seen growing up, whether it's their dad or their mum. And those habits probably aren't serving them, but that's all that they know. However, once you start taking a step back and actually looking at, why do I do this? And I don't actually want to do that. How can I change that? Most people go to if I offer my service as a coach to guys and the response is, I shoot my shit down the pub with the boys. I'm like, that's great from a social perspective that you have a group of lads that you can talk to. But what you'll find is that's just an echo chamber of guys talking the same shit. Nobody's actually fixing any of their anything. And everyone stays stuck. And it just takes that one person to take a step back and say, no, I'm not coming out tonight. I'm, staying at home to, save money or, I just want to stop drinking. I want to get healthy for a little while. And normally you'll get belittled for that. Like, that's a huge one that, coming from the UK, that's a definite one. Like in the construction industry, you get that. But yeah, coming from the UK, you have it here in Australia, like the tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
Like where they talk about that.
Yeah.
Just takes that one person. And what I now know, and this comes from probably a long line of actually going through, is at the end of the day, don't give a fuck what anyone else thinks. Like, they're not going to fix you. They're going to help you. And I remember having this conversation with a young lad back home before I left to come travelling. I remember him telling me, like, he wanted to go to, I think he wanted to go to Spain. He wanted to leave our area because his uncle was a drug addict and he was in and out of hospital, and you know, a lot of his mates were starting to go down that route. And I remember him saying, like, you know, I want to leave. I was like, fucking go. I was like, it was a birthday party we were at. I was like, this whole room of people here, they may be your friends right now, and you know, they may have your back, as they all say, but when shit hits the fan, you'll be lucky to see how many of them are actually here for you. I was like, however, if you go, you know, go to Spain, go to Italy, France, wherever you want to do, and go and just do something for yourself, you'll probably see that you won't get dragged back. Unfortunately, he never took my knowledge. He never took my my advice, and he's got multiple kids, multiple women. He's an alcoholic. He's a drug addict. So,
yeah.
The thing is, you can tell people this, but if they don't want to fix themselves, if they're comfortable with where they are because it's scary to change, you can't do anything. You can't change people. You can only advise them and show them a different way. It's the old saying, you can't lead a horse to water. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't drink.
Yeah.
Very much the same in this industry. Like the amount of conversations I have with people who you can point out to them, you know, just by that having a conversation with them, they'll actually point out to you where they're going wrong in life, and you'll say, well, if you know, we just changed this, yeah, okay, then you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
Like that fear of change is too overwhelming for some people.
Yeah, I don't like that quote, the lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I have a little version of it where I'll fucking drown it if it doesn't. But I've been thinking about that quote a lot lately, actually. I'll come back to that in a second too, because the first thing you mentioned was, I call them the three devils: drinking, drugs, and gambling. They're the three devils. I do my best to stay away. The one that's got me the most is gambling. Every now and then I'll break and I'll go to the pokies and I'll have a quick slap, and then I'll beat myself up for a couple
There's
months.
another one to add to that too.
Yeah.
It's dirty women.
Dirty. Yeah, true.
That one will get you.
Yeah, true. Definitely, I'll put that in there as well.
The 4
I've
Gs.
had a little bit of experience with that one too, but we'll try to avoid that one.
You and me both. Unfortunately, that was my downfall. I never went down the drink or the drugs or the gambling. I never ever have been interested in gambling. Like, I just don't. I'm glad I don't have the mindset for it. Like back home, I remember me and a few boys would go out on a Thursday night, and before we'd pass the very first chip shop that we'd pass, would have a gambling, would have a pokie machine in it. Back home, it's different. They don't have huge setups like what they have here.
Yeah.
They'll just have like the odd pokie in a pub or a restaurant or a chip shop. And one of the boys would put in £60, and that's a lot of money back home. Like £60 is a full night out back home.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And he would put that in the machine before he'd even go out, and they'd be like, "Fuck, I'm skint." I'm like, "Yeah, dickhead, you just put it all in there." But every time he passed, he couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And I've never understood it. I know it's an addiction, and I know it takes over people, but I'm thankful that I've never ever had to go down that route.
Yeah. I think that, and before I get back to the horse thing you're talking about, but I think escapism is a massive thing that we suffer from, mostly men in general. I guess women might as well. I'm not sure. I can't speak from the mind of a woman, but escapism is in like wanting to, I guess we try everything out of curiosity. That's why I did drugs and alcohol and gambling in the first place. But it's also, you referenced it before too, where a guy is having troubles at home, so he'll just spend more hours at work and he's not putting in the time to fix the problems he's got at home. So he's escaping from that to come here. And then I hear that some people escape being at home, escape being at work by having days off because they don't like the situation. And then I guess people are just escaping their mindset by going to the pub and spending all afternoon drinking. It's a massive, I think free time might be a big problem that we suffer from as well. Maybe we haven't got enough productivity, and that's why so many people are wasting their time doing these things.
As well.
Purpose,
like if you don't have a purpose and you don't have something that you're working towards, that's when you have all this free time. So like you say, you escape with, like, if you don't have a purpose of fixing your marriage or fixing your relationship, and it's easier just to ignore it, then you don't have a purpose. Like, and it's the same with like gaming. Like, people will escape and they'll play hours of gaming because their life sucks. However, if you were to, pick something in your life that you wanted to change, or have a purpose and something that you were working towards, when you had goals every day, or you had something that you had to do every day, you wouldn't have so much free time. So you're right, people are escaping because they either have no not that they don't have any meaning to life, but it's like they just don't really have.
Yeah, like I don't know how I would describe purpose is just a reason for being there. You know, meaning is just whatever you attach it to, really. So they might not have a meaning.
Yeah, and that's it. Like a lot of people will come home and have a hard day's work, and their downtime is just gambling or having a few beers. But that's fine. It's when it takes over your life, and that's your only go-to. Like you can't wait to get home to have a few beers, and like I think that's the fine line between when it becomes a reason and when it becomes a crutch. I think there's a fine line between that. Touching on the drowning the horse that you were speaking about, yes, to a certain degree. Similar. I remember an old boy telling me one time when dealing with, I was a site manager and I was trying to deal with some shitty contractors, and he's like, you use the honey. He was an old boy, and he's like, you use the honey or you use the stick. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you be nice to them, you fucking clip them around the back of the head. Yeah. He says sometimes you need to use both to get the outcome, and that's similar to there. Like you can push people to do things so much. And you'll either push them away or you push them to a cracking point where they'll actually, okay, you know what, you're right, fuck it, I need to do this. Mm-hmm. My job as a life coach is to not tell them how to do it, but just work with them along the way. I know there's a few different people like mentors and counselors that will do different things. However, I don't try and tell the boys that they need to do this. Like if they tell me they're at A and they want to get to B, for instance, like let's just say I'll say, right, okay, well, here's what we need to do. We'll back engineer it, and I'll just keep them accountable. I'll maybe help them know a few things. Okay, this is how I would do it, or this is how I've done it in the past. What's your thoughts on that? Like I never force people to do anything that they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. Just gently nudge them. Nudge them.
I notice that's what a good therapist or a good psychiatrist will do as well. They won't give people the answers when they're looking for them. They'll just help them find their own answer. It's all self-development in the end. And that's why when I think of the horse story, I think to myself, well, if the goal is just to lead the horse to water, then it's not going to drink. But if your goal is to have a horse drink at the water when it gets to the water, you take it on a massive journey of dehydration and exhaustion where you're both just completely dehydrated by the end. And then by the time you get to the watering hole, you both need to drink together. Like you're kind of leading by example, but it's kind of the purpose and the goal in which, if the goal was to get it to drink, I'm pretty sure I could get the horse to drink the water. You know what I mean? So, I do struggle to come to terms with the fact that you can't help anyone if they're not willing to help themselves. I just don't like that, and I'm gonna find proof into whatever I want to believe anyway. So I think maybe everyone should try and change that narrative, because just because someone is negative spiraling, it's not like you can't help them. It's just harder to help them because it might just need to ask them the right questions or show them what you're doing and how you got there from a position in which they're in now. Like, I think that you can help people even if they don't necessarily want the help. They just might not know they want the help. You know what I mean?
What you can do as well is reframe how they're looking at things. Like that's a lot of stuff. So if you've got someone who's super negative and they see the negative in everything, you can help them reframe what they're looking at. And then that can not force them, but that can help them to drink, let's say. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, you're looking at it this way and you have been looking at it this way. And that can stem from, how their mum and dad brought them up. If you come in the house every night and your mum and dad are complaining about everything that's going on around you, like complaining about the neighbour or complaining about their work or what's on the TV, that's the mindset that you're going to have because you don't know any different. So actually show people that, you can actually change everything if you really want to. Like how you look at something. Like you can reframe it, and then when they actually start doing that, then that's when they can actually want to change, because it's once you change one thing and you feel the benefit of it and you see the benefit of it, and it's very addictive. The personal development. It's like you've done one thing, and then once you've realized that, you're like, okay, well, that's when people start going down the healing route of like thinking about, well, this was done to me. You're like, how, rather than getting stuck on that and using that as a crutch all of your life, heal it, deal with it. Like whatever it was. And then from that, it opens up other things. It's amazing because once you heal one part of yourself, something else will open up. But some people get stuck on just constantly being on their healing journey, and that's all they're ever doing. And they're constantly talking about their story, and they're constantly talking about what happened to them. And what happens is the brain doesn't know the difference between the actual thing, being fixed and sorted. If you keep replaying the same story, you're retelling your subconscious. So it's like, deal with it. Okay, that's it. Then move on.
Yeah, well, that makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because if that's just the new habit you're creating a habit of just constantly referring back to that same situation over and over and over again.
Yeah. I only learned that a few months ago. Like I listened to that. I think it was a podcast, and it was probably one of Rogan's podcasts, and somebody was saying that it's like people can fix themselves. However, if they keep telling the same story, all they're doing is just putting it back into their head. They've done all the work out here. They've done all the work on themselves, on their surroundings, their environment. They've changed themselves. However, if they're still telling themselves the same story, and I got to here because of here, it's just the exact same as if nothing's been fixed.
Wow, it's such a massive road, this personal development journey. It's why it's so good that we have voices like yourself speaking for the people who aren't really self-aware enough of the fact. What are some of the things that you think could change in people's lives? Maybe not just on a personal level of accountability, but what could some businesses start doing as well to help spread this awareness and some steps in order to help lower these statistics?
Yeah, well, in the construction industry, I definitely think that we need to start leading from the top, like the offices and the site managers. They need to. There's all of these initiatives that want to help people, me being one of them. However, if the site manager or the project manager won't give you the time to do it, and with the new psychosocial legislation that's been brought out, they tell you that you have to do this, but no one's actually really challenging them on it, which is. It's another HR ticky box bullshit. Like, this is what you should do. However, if no one's checking it, then no one's going to do it. So a lot of it needs to come from the top down. We need to be implementing having these conversations more. And that's something that I'm pushing for massively, like on the ground. Because what I find is, especially in construction, what works in the nice, safe, warm, cozy office environment when it comes to mental health doesn't work on the ground in like lunch sheds or site sheds. And I'm trying to implement people allowing me to come out to their sites and actually having these conversations with the guys, because it's great having if you need to talk to somebody, here's a number up on the lunch shed. No one's ever going to see that.
Yeah.
If they don't know it's there, like they'll never know. Like a friend of mine who's a mental health first aider, she's put me through my first aid course right now. She was telling me she went out to a business and the head of the business was like, yeah, we're really, we've got everything in place for our staff. If they need mental health days, we let them go, and we really look after them. And she's like, okay, that's great. Like, who do they call if there's any issues? Oh, we have our employees wellness program. Okay, where is it? Oh, it's on our website. 17 clicks into the website before anyone can find it. She was like, why is it buried that far down? Like, oh, but it's there. She's like, yeah, it's great that it's there, but who the fuck's going to find that after scaling through your website? Like, do employees know where it is? Right, so there's it definitely coming from the top down, changing the culture of how we go about talking about mental health. And also, I don't think it's so much in the construction industry. Maybe it is, but people owning up to what's going on for them and not being chastised for it. Like, I know in the army and the police force, mental health, if it's mentioned, then you're shut down. Like, you can't do your job properly. And that's why a lot of people go so silent. In the construction industry, I don't really think it stops you doing your job to the same aspect as what the army and the police do. However, there's probably a lot of people who are scared to talk up for fear of being judged or kind of looked down upon. So that needs to come from a top-down perspective. Just having more conversations, being open to it and talking about it actually more, and having more people championing it and having those conversations on site and with people. I think it's going to go a long way to have other people opening up and having the services there that they can get to. Unfortunately for trades, cost is always going to be an issue for these services. There's people like Trademark and TX who give a free service, which is great, but not everyone knows about them. So I think we need to have more top-down services where the guys don't pay for them. Like, there's so many budgets out there for some ridiculous things. Mental health should really be top of the list. Sure. Even if it's 5 sessions, 10 sessions, whatever, with somebody, just to have someone on the other end of the phone when you're having one of those days. And what I really like about TX and Trademark is it's over the phone or it's a text service. So you can text them and a counsellor will respond to you. For those people who maybe don't want to physically see somebody for fear of being judged or for, for other people knowing, you've got a text service there that you can talk to them. And they normally, what they have found is like after 3 or 4 sessions, guys are good. Like we don't need a full, like, just to get us over that initial hurdle, we don't need like a full 10 sessions setup. Like it's just, as guys, sometimes we just need to vent and just get it out. Start having the conversations about how we can change some little things. And then leading from there, I think a lot of people need to take ownership of their own shit as well. Like companies and businesses can only do so much, can only provide these services. However, if the individual's not willing to say, right, okay, enough is enough, I need to take ownership of this and get some accountability, get some education on what they need to do, and then, just be aware of why you're doing the things that you're doing, and if you're not, start asking the questions. I think it's like everything. The companies can only do so much and provide so much services. If they're not getting used, then they're going to take them away from people, unfortunately. And budgets are a very fickle thing when it comes to business. They can be there 1 year and then they can be taken away and put to something the next. Doesn't mean that the problem's gone away by any chance. And I think the more conversations that we're having, and I'm not the only one that's having this conversation in construction, there's more people. I'm hoping that they start putting some funds back into it so that we can at least try and help drive down the rate of suicide.
Yeah, for sure. It's when I think about the decline that mental health has taken, I can only ever refer to it in men because I don't have the statistics, and I said it before, I'm not a woman. I don't know. I don't even know many, to be honest. Like
You don't know
I
any women.
don't talk to many. Like I've got my partner and I got my mum, my sister, and that's probably got like 2 or 3 friends, as far as I go. But when it comes to the boys, like I've got unlimited of them.
Yeah.
So when I look around and I see such a decline in mental health, especially I see it inside trade of refrigeration, and it's actually a point I wrote down for later as well, but I compare it to the lives that men lived and like fathers beforehand through times of like sickness and plague and famine and mostly war. It's like we clearly live in the greatest time to be alive, especially for experience, and here in Australia, the land of opportunity in general.
Yeah.
But why is it taking so much more toll now compared to what it was?
It's the old quote that good times create soft men. And what I mean by that is those men who grew up through World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, Iraq War, my dad was one, my granddad was one, probably very similar to yours. They didn't have the luxury of opening up about what was going on for them because they were trying to hide so many horrors that they had seen. And the easiest thing for them to do is just to shut down and not open up about any of it, because it's almost like a Pandora's box once you open that. And they were conditioned to just get on with it. However, what that led to was men who weren't able to open up about what was going on for them. They weren't able to connect with their kids properly. They weren't able to show love and affection, which then meant those kids grew up not really knowing what to do, but then they grew up in a new world where they weren't war, feast, famine, like you said. They didn't have to block everything in, and the world's their oyster. They've got everything, internet, everything's instant in our world now. And then because they didn't get the love, the affection, everything they wanted as a father from their fathers, their grandfathers, they fill that void with the drink, the drugs, loose women, gambling, whatever it may be. But also, we don't have any... how can I word this? Like, when those wars and all of the hard times were going on, everyone stuck together. Like, you had more of a community of people, whereas now you don't have that. Like, there's not a place where everyone goes. Like, we don't have like Boy Scouts or Girl Guides or anything like that anymore. There's a community of people that come together that are kind of all learning how to deal with their own stuff. Now, most people will come home and they're either on their phones, they're on social media, but not really being social, or they're on the laptops, or they're just come home to nothing. Like you said, you have your own small pocket of people, and everyone, you know, I find it really strange coming to Australia because back home I lived on one street for the majority of my life and everybody knows each other. Whereas here, because we're so multicultural, there's many people from different places. You don't, unless you've lived in that same street all your life, you don't have that kind of community vibe or community care. So while we've learned to open up and be more connected with ourselves and our loved ones, we do have a lot more time to kind of ponder on the things that we would want more or that, you know, we didn't get. And it took me a long time to realize that, you know, I used to frown upon the things that I wish my dad had given me that I missed out on over the years. But then I realized he never got that from his dad because they grew up in a different time. He didn't get that from his dad. So it's kind of like you have to, at some point you have to just say, right, okay, it's not because of what I wanted or I didn't get what I wanted. It's because that person didn't know how to give it to me. So it's in a kind of a roundabout way of the generations are different. And whereas we're improving in one side of a generation, we don't have as much to help us kind of be strong and push through. And that community vibe is what they did when there was all the wars and the feast and the famine going on. So
no, I definitely didn't consider the community aspect at all, because I know that Australia suffers a pretty high level of mental health decline, especially when you compare it to some other parts in the world in which they don't have anywhere near the type of opportunities that we have. They are very happy people, but they have massive communities, you know. I also think that diets are taking a massive toll as well, and I wonder if you think that helps implant as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I by no means can speak on being fit and healthy, having a proper diet as much as I'd like to be. But yeah, the more and more I see, read and hear, Western diet is shocking. Like the amount of crap that we put in our bodies for the food. Like I remember somebody telling me that when you go into the supermarket, you just want to buy from the first three rows and that's it, which is your fruit, your veg, your bread. The rest of it is all just ignore it. Or it's you shop the outer rim of the shop because all the stuff inside is just shit. And it's so true. Like our diets are shocking. I met a guy a few months ago it was at the Castle Hill. It was a mental health day, and he was a tradie, late 30s, early 40s, typical. You know, he was 200 pounds, big, heavy set guy, big beard, long hair. Like I think he was a labourer or a builder, just your typical tradie, eating pies and, you know, V and everything that you think of a tradie, an unhealthy tradie. Joshua was it. Yeah. However, it was before COVID, and he had a breakdown with his girlfriend, so he was on his own a lot, and he was like, okay, enough is enough. I want to change. Like he'd never been to the gym in his life. His diet was shocking, and he just, for whatever reason, he started running, and you know, he started looking at his diet, and he found out that he was celiac, so he took certain things out of his diet, and then he thought, actually, well, if I'm taking that out and it's helping, what else can I take out? So he started taking out all of these things out of his diet, and then he stopped buying takeout, and he stopped buying things from the shops. He would go to the butcher, he would buy proper produce and make it himself too, not get fast food. So within the space of 2 years, he went from being this like big, massive, overweight tradie to now he's jacked. He looks like something out of like a Tarzan. Yeah. He's actually been approached to be an underwear model. That's how good he looks.
Wow.
And I'm putting together a modern tradie collective event in a couple of months. And it's focusing around tradies' mental health and fitness and wellness. And I want him to come because his story is like mine. It's a story of someone who has been there, seen it and done it, but from a fitness and nutrition perspective. Yeah. And he's like 43 now. He has his own construction company, and he's like he runs rings around the young lads. Yeah, nice. And he's like, he says I go running twice a week. He's like, all of his food prep is made, and he's like, I just feel $1 million. He says, I can't actually believe how I used to live life and how easy it is now. So I think he is just a huge example of what's possible if you put. Now he doesn't have any kids. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He has a lot, and that's what he says. He's like, I'm very lucky. I don't have a lot of the stresses that some other people have. However, you can still implement these little things in your life, and you know, if your life means that much to you and you know the benefit of it, you will take these things out. And he's just like a sheer example of what's possible, and also what shit is out there that we are putting in our bodies.
Well, it makes sense to me considering the fact that processed foods are pretty nuanced invention, especially to come across in such a massive market. You know what I mean? The whole entire domestic market is all processed foods now, and I think his name's Dr. Seb. Maybe it was Dr. Seb. I can't remember the guy's name, but he invented this philosophy that's more like everything you put into your body, think of it as either poison or nutrition. And I see that old diets were all nutrition. They might have had boring meals all the time. That's why I look, when I think of the past, I think that would have been pretty shit growing up then, you know, just the same chicken and veggie every single night. But at least they weren't combining all these different preservatives and added ingredients and things like that. And we all know a healthy body is a healthy mind. And if I see the rise in depression, then I kind of see it to be an example as to why it must come to at least a fraction of what we're putting into our body.
Yeah, it has to be. I'm definitely the same mind as you. Like I see, like the Western diet and the West mental health has to be a huge correlation, because you know if you're feeding yourself with shit, you're gonna feel shit. You're not gonna be motivated. You're not gonna want to do anything. And that's obviously gonna play on your mind. You know, you're gonna think, oh, I wish I could do more. I wish I could be better, but I'm not. I'm a fat slob, blah blah blah, and it's just a cycle. And it is. I don't know what it is they put in their food. Like you look at the back of half the foods, and it just looks like a science project.
Yeah, I was reading Cupcakes yesterday. I was like, I have no idea what any of this is.
And we're just like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll do that. I'll take that. It's like there's a guy I'm following right now. He has some muscle and bone dystrophy. Like he's an older guy, Aussie guy. I'd say he's probably late 40s, but he's just started the carnivore diet.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, I'm taking this like 30 days just to see if it can, you know, help with his like inflammation, his blood pressure, his gut health, all of this. And I've heard so many people talk about it, how beneficial it is, and it makes sense. Like when you look around the world at some people, and all they're eating chicken, beef, pork, lamb from the land, not this like pumped up shit that we get in the shops.
Yeah.
And they're just eating clean veggies and the fruit
and rice and things like that. Yeah.
It makes sense that that would also be having your gut health is your mind health, and that's something that I've recently been learning about as well. How the two of them are connected. And it goes back to the instantaneousness of everything we have in life right now. Like you don't have to go out to buy your food. It can get shipped to the door. You don't have to wash it, cook it, cut it, cook it, clean it. Like none of that has to happen. So there's a whole portion of our lives that we used to do together. You know, in the kitchen, you know, mum and dad would be cooking, the kids would be running around, then you'd all sit down and have meals. You know, there was like a bit of the family dynamic that's missing now, because the kids will be running around and you'll be on your phone. And I do it sometimes too. Like I'm not preaching this to anyone, but I'm just saying that this is what our life's like.
Yeah.
Like instant on the food. It's great some nights when you just want to chill out with the kids, but if you're doing that every single night, one, you don't really know what's going into your food if someone else is cooking it for you. Two, if you're not going out to buy it and it's getting shipped to you, you're not really doing anything exercise-wise. And it's also the cost of that too. Like everything's instant, but it's, you know, what you'd spend on Uber Eats, you could spend a quarter of that on actual shopping, and then spend other money to do other things. So there's a whole myriad of things that add into it. But yeah, I think the diet that we have is just shocking. Yeah.
I see it being a massive contributor, at least to our mental health, what we're doing to our bodies. Because if you're not going to respect your body, it kind of comes to that old saying: if you want to love someone, you have to love yourself.
Yeah. If
you're not treating yourself with enough care, you might not be putting enough care into other parts of your life in general. It might not necessarily mean family, but you're not putting enough thought into what you're eating, so you're not putting enough thought into how you're feeling. You're not putting enough thought. You know, it's that positive feedback loop, as you say. You fix one thing, you're going to want to continue to fix other things as well. Yeah. I was curious. You mentioned these talks and seminars and stuff you do, and from what I could see, it looks like you do a lot. I don't know how you see it, but it looks like you do a lot of talks and places like this.
I take any opportunity I can. I've been building this for the past, since 2021, so we're coming up on 3 years now, and people are only now starting to take notice. So I try and take as many opportunities as I can to, one, get the word out on mental health as well as my services for other people, because I think if I don't do it, like, who else will? I know there's, like I said, we're having a lot more conversations, but yeah, I do. My girlfriend does say to me sometimes, like, you need to slow down, like, you need to stop, because I have my kids 1 week, and the other week they go to their mums, and the week that I have them, I try not to do as many business things. Like, I try and fully focus on the girls, and their time is my time. And then the week that I don't have them, I'm building this from scratch.
Yeah.
So I hit the ground running most nights. Like, I don't get to bed till 12, and then I'm up at 6 again, and it's solely just because I'm trying to build this. And I never ever wanted to have my own business, never ever. So when I was an apprentice, I worked for a guy, and I always wanted to have my own business, run my own company. And then I saw the shit that he had to deal with. And I was like, no, I'm out. I'm happy to work for somebody, and they can deal with all that for the rest of their life. However, when my 2 mates died, I had a complete flip around, like a complete change in my outlook on life. I was like, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own time. I want to have my own freedom. And then that put me on this path of kind of like entrepreneurship, or whatever you want to call it. But I was like, I want to do my own thing, but that entail makes me come up with like 100 different other things that I want to do. So like I want to do a documentary on this, on what we're like the industry. I have initiative that I want to take to the sites, taking it out to them. What else have I got going? I would like to start a podcast at some point on this, to get more word out, get more people in, tell more stories. I'm just about to pivot my life coaching business, or tradie coaching, to consulting, because the life coaching still gets a bit of a negative connotation when you say it to some people, because there is so many cowboys out there in the life coaching industry. Like, many people have said to me, like, oh, excuse me, why don't you just go and coach men? Like, I'm like, because everyone and their dog does that. Everyone's a men's health coach, or a men's mindset coach, or a men's relationship coach, or whatever. I was like, I don't really want to help all men. I'd love to be able to. I'd love to pass on some knowledge. However, no one else is looking after our tradies, and that's my job. Like, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to focus on our trades. So between that and talks, and the more, for me, the bigger audience I can get, the more people who will listen, and the more conversations I have, empowers me more, because people are like, yeah, we definitely need that in the industry, and, you know, we definitely need a change, and, you know, we definitely are men. And it normally comes from like wives, daughters, sisters, co-workers who are like, yeah, I know somebody who could do with your help, and that just keeps pushing me, because I know the impact being personal development had on me as not only a tradesman, but as a father, and as a partner, and how it helped me improve. If I can impart that onto, you know, some other men, and then the ripple effect that has on their colleagues, their workforce, their kids, it's, I don't know. I just think it seems like a lot, but it doesn't feel like a lot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
It may be different once all of these things start to take off, and I'm like, fuck, I don't have time for all of these. That's when I'll implement, and I'll bring a team in. Like, I would like to have a few. The plan is to have an initiative of myself and a few other coaches in vans, in trucks, in utes, going around the states, going around to the sites, and giving talks, presentations, actually in front of the sites. So I'm gonna have to duplicate myself. Hopefully soon. Sooner rather than later would be good, because that means the message can get out. But I don't know. A lot of people say to me, like, you know, I really admire how you've stuck at it for 3 years, because the amount of doors I've had closed in my face, and the amount of, you know, you go and speak to companies, and they're like, oh, we deal with our mental health in house. I'm like, oh, that's great. What do you do? Oh, we'll not disclose that. That screams to me they do fuck all. They put like a fruit bowl in the lunchroom. Like, because for me, if you were doing something that was helping the mental health of your guys, you'd want to talk about it. You'd want to showcase it. You'd want to implement it elsewhere. Whereas a lot of them don't. And when I offer my services, whether it's because I'm just a one-man band right now, or because they don't want to admit that their guys need help, I'm not sure what it is, but it's taken me this long now to just continually keep slogging. So, you know, getting put in magazines, doing podcasts, like doing presentations. Like, I just think I just have to keep pushing the message out there, and it'll just take one person to say, okay, we like what you're doing. Here's a pilot program, run it. Here's the success, and then it'll just take on from there.
Definitely.
I try and balance it with my kids business and my partner. Like I try, and I learned that the hard way. I didn't used to do that before. It was just work. So not only did my marriage fail because of that, my relationship with my kids was failing, my relationship with myself. So now I'm very conscious of having the three split: me time, us time, family time, and then business time. So
yeah, I think that's something that I'm always trying to work out. I got to be honest with you. I struggle with that, and I've mentioned it on the podcast many times. I'm trying to find that balance. How much time do I devote to my passions? How much time do I devote to my family? How much time do I devote to work? And how much time do I devote to myself? Like, that is a tightrope that I'm always failing to walk.
I don't think there's an honest answer for that. Like, I think that has to come from you. Like, people will tell you that you can definitely need to spend time on yourself, because at the end of the day, if you burn out, everything else goes to shit. So that one definitely has to be our priority. But how you utilize the rest, like, that's everyone will have their own opinion, but it'll ultimately come down to you.
Yeah.
Like, there's a guy, what's his name? Rob Deerdeck, I think. He's been on a few.
Deerdeck, yeah. He's I know the guy you're talking about, yeah.
He runs his life. Like, I admire how he does it, like how he's got every part of his life segmented.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit OCD for me. Like, I like to just sometimes just sit down and fucking breathe.
Yeah.
But I mean, the guy's a multi-million-dollar businessman, so it clearly works for him.
Yeah.
And by all means, by looks of it, the stuff that he puts out with his family, it works for them. So, like I say, what works for one person clearly works for them, but it might not work for you.
Yeah, I think there's common traits in things that don't work, not necessarily, but there might not be a golden ticket to the things that do work. In my trade, it's, from my own personal experience looking around, I would say over 90, I could comfortably say 95% of the tradies I've met in my trade are divorced. Like, it's that high, and then probably 50% of those have trouble seeing their kids in general, let alone.
That's a huge one.
Like, it's like, and then that has always had fear in me, especially. I'm at a stage now where I have a partner and we're having a child together.
Nice.
She has a son of her own, which I've been super grateful to be a part of that journey. It was kind of like I got a little trailer to see what it was going to be like, becoming a father. It's like I got to play the demo game.
How old, boy, girl? How old?
4 years old boy.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so it's been such an amazing chapter so far, and I'm excited to everything to come in the future. But it's also, I look around and I got fear as well. It's like, it's such a demand. It's also demanding, like, especially, I'm sure all construction's like that, but in our trade, we do nights. So I only work nights. That's all I do. So we have to sneak into the supermarkets. I consider us to be like ninjas, We pull everything apart, fix it, put it all back together, run out before the customers come in.
Yeah, I know that well. I used to do shop fitting. So we used to say with the SAS of the trade, you've got to be in and out before anybody knows.
Yeah. So there's definitely got to be some commonalities between things that aren't working out, and I'm always trying to ask the guys all the time, like, oh, how much time do you spend at work? How much time do you spend at home? And I'm trying to see the missing links, at least, so I can try and learn something off the older generation who have done it, because it's not something that I want to step into, starting to have all these dramas and baby mama problems and, didn't spend enough time doing this. And but at the same time, I've also got to hustle. I've got to strive. I've got to push to make things happen.
Yep.
I think that must be a reason why men feel so alone when they're going through their problems, because you kind of feel like it's all your responsibility to make it happen. Like, we're meant to be the providers of the households, which I'm comfortable being. I'm not complaining about that. But at the same time, if you're the one who you feel like it's all your responsibility, your mental state's kind of like, well, everything else is on me. This is kind of all on me as well.
I think one of the things that you said there, which I think a lot more people need to do, is you're asking older trades, you're asking people within the industry, mentors, and that goes back to the community thing. Like, the guys, although we take a lot of stuff on our own, and yes, we're the provider and you think it all falls on us, we need to have somebody that we can go to, like the Brotherhood and communities. I think that's one of our major downfalls as men in this new age, whatever, however you want to put ourselves as. We don't have a collective of guys that we can go to and talk about that stuff. We may have friends. Like I recently joined a thing called the Men's Table. It's where like 12 guys meet every month for dinner, talk about their lives, what's going on for them. Each man has a turn to go around the table. We don't try and fix him unless he asks us for help, advice. We just sit there and listen, and it's just 12 guys, all from different walks of life. Like you can, office workers, counsellors, tradies like me, whatever it is, but we all just come together. And what I like about that is it's a room of guys who are actually there to help themselves, but also help other people. Whereas you can have a group of mates who you go to the pub with and chat shit with, and you're not going to open up about what's going on for you if you don't feel like they're going to be able to reciprocate that. So we need to have those men in our lives that we can look up to and we can open up to and talk and say, right, this is what I've got going on. Like, what have you seen? What have you done? What can you advise? I think if we were to have that, a lot more of this lonely men, lone wolf bullshit that we have, I think our men would be better. We need to have that kind of mentor, mentee, fatherhood type. And it doesn't even have to be your dad, like, because, if you're lucky enough to have a dad who was there and, you have a great relationship with him and you can have those questions, awesome. But not a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
Some people come from single homes. Some people, unfortunately, their dad had passed away, or whatever the reason is. But if you can find those people and you have somebody to just ask the questions, like not even pass the burden on to, it's just like, yeah. And you'll find that they'll be like, yeah, I remember being that age and I remember going through that. And, it's tough times. It's not easy, but, it'll get better. And it just that reassurance that you're not the only one, and it's because that's what we do. We think that we're the only ones with the only problems, and realistically, there's millions of men out there. But if we were just, it's amazing. A problem shared is a problem halved, as they say. And what you think, and again, it's a reframing. Like you might think it's the end of the world, what's going on for you, but these guys can be like, that's think of it this way. And what I find with the long hours and the night shift, and it's like FIFO work or shop fitting, if you have an end goal in mind and that's what you're working towards, it makes it a lot more durable. Maybe not easier, but you're doing it for a reason. Like I know a lot of people who are in FIFO, and the suicide statistics and mental health in FIFO can be quite bad as well because of the isolation of working 14 hours and going to your crib and then coming back. However, what I have found by speaking to few boys who are in that space, the guys who have an end goal, or the guys who are working towards something, or again that purpose or that goal driven, they can deal with it a lot more, because on the days when it does get hard and it gets shitty, you're like, right, okay, just say you're saving for a house, you're trying to get, I don't even know how much houses are now, but just say you're trying
Too
to get
much.
yeah I don't even want to, let's just say $1 million, for instance, okay, and let's just say you need to get 200 grand for a deposit, and on this swing you're gonna save 20 grand, on the next swing it's gonna be, you can count down. Might not do it forever, but it serves a purpose and it serves the goal. And I think if you have that, as well as having other people in your corner, it can certainly help you regulate a little bit more, feel that you're not on your own and you're not doing it for just no reason. But yeah, it's definitely a balance between work life and family life, and also what I have found in the downfall to my marriage is not being on the same page as your partner. Want two different things. Like we were together since we were 18. We did ticked all the boxes that you're supposed to, engaged, got a house, got married. We then came traveling instead of settling down like what most people do. But then we came here, started having kids, and technically ticking all the boxes. However, we were growing apart as two individuals. Like we went through the death of two of our friends. We were living on the other side of the world, away from family. So we just pretty much had to do it all ourselves. And that can make you and break you. You both grow apart, you grow as different people. However, if you don't have those conversations about what's going on for you, you just fall into and this is why you have so many people who've got loveless marriages. They stay together for the kids, and then the kids go to 18, 19, 20, go off to uni, go off whatever around the world, and there's just two people sitting in the living room looking at each other like, fuck you, we don't know each other.
Yeah.
And I hate to get to that. However, if more people were to have those honest, open conversations and say, this is how I feel, we're not going anywhere, what can we change? And if you can work on that together and put time into that, then it can definitely help. But like you said, in our industry, there's so many single men, so many men who don't get to see their kids. And I think it's because they just throw themselves into work. And I did that for a long time. I just was work, would come home and be dad. And even at that, it was just like dinner, bed, dad. And there needs to be a bit more of a balance than that.
Yeah.
And it's working out what that balance is for you, for your family, for those around about you, and definitely having more time as a couple and just having you time, the two of you, and talking about those things and like, you know, where are we going? Like what are our goals? What are our dreams? And it sounds really cheesy, but like sitting down together and like writing out your goals. Like, what do you want out of life? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, what do we want to do? Because there's nothing worse than being on the journey with someone for 5 years and you get to the other end and they want to go this way and you want to go that way.
Yeah.
It's like if we had negated this at the start, like when I first met my wife when I was 18, I said, I don't want to get married because my mum and dad had a messy breakup. I don't want to have kids because I just didn't. And I'm going to Australia. And she was like, okay, well, I want to get married. I want to have kids because she's got quite a big family. And I never want to leave Scotland because I love here. And we're like, okay, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And yeah, we worked, you know, we went through, I stayed at home for a little bit while longer than I wanted to. And we worked through it. And then, yeah, we decided to come traveling. And thankfully, when we got here, she loved it. So we stayed.
Yep.
And thankfully, even when we separated, she still wants to stay here. And like, home is here for her now because our kids are here. But yeah, I think if people could have those open, honest, difficult conversations sometimes earlier on and know what path you're going down together, it would definitely negate a lot of just burying your head in the sand and getting on with it. But again, nobody tells you that.
No.
Nobody gives you when you become a parent, nobody gives you a handbook. When you get married, nobody gives you a handbook. Like, people can tell you little things, but yeah, nobody gives you the this is what you should and shouldn't do. You just got to kind of work it out as you go.
Yeah, I noticed that. But I think conversations, as you said, is the number one thing to help push anything in the right direction, just having conversations. How do your conversations look? Because you did mention you go to Tafe and you've spoken to a couple of Tafe teachers and stuff about messages. So how do your conversations go in differences from speaking to the lads on site to speaking to the youngest generation in Tafe?
Yeah, the guys at Tafe don't really... They either don't want to listen because they think they know it all, like most 16, 17-year-olds do. So it comes from more of a space of like, you know, this is what could happen if you go down this route. Also, this is what... It comes from more of a... I'd say more of a kind of mentor, kind of mentee type role, because you can't tell them what to do because they probably they're already in a space where, you know, they've left school where they're getting taught to do something, and now they're at Tafe where they're being told to do this is what you have. So you kind of have to change your wording and how you come across. Whereas when I'm on site, I'm quite direct with the guys. So I'm like, right, at the end of the day, you're just a number, and if you don't look after your health, your mental health, your safety, you'll be replaced tomorrow. However, you won't be replaced at home. Like, that's the power of my message when I'm on site. I'm very direct with it because I'm like, we're losing too many of our guys. And it's solely because we won't fucking open up and talk about what's going on for us. Enough of this macho bullshit. It clearly hasn't worked for us for so long. So how about we change it? And I actually change the way I look at opening up and working on yourself as a weakness. I think it's a superpower. Like, if you can actually open up about what's going on for you, absorb that and say, right, okay, swallow your pride. This is what I have done wrong. This is what I need to change. You'd be surprised how many people actually resonate with that, and they think, oh yeah, actually, you know what, yeah, a kick in the... it's the stick in the honey. Like, if you beat someone over the head and tell them that they're a fucking idiot, they're not going to listen. However, you say, right, at the end of the day, this is the job. Like, we've all done stupid things, we've all been there. However, at the end of the day, you're going to be replaced tomorrow at the drop of a hat by your employer. A number's going to go in the paper and they're going to have somebody there. No one's going to walk through the door back home. And it's as real as that for me. Like, especially when you've got kids. Like, I know those things I did as pre-kids on site that as soon as my girls come along, I stop doing straight away. I just wouldn't even think about doing them. So, it comes down to those crunch points in life, whether it's something hard or harsh that's happened to you, you rethink, or whether, you know, the small little baby gets put in your arms and like your whole world revolves around them, all of everything else doesn't matter. It's a reframing on how you look at things. And then I've done a few Beyond Blue talks and golf courses, and it's a whole mix of people in there. And it's funny, I did one and it was tradies, but it was all older tradies and their wives and some of the young ones. And it's funny because you're talking about the old grumpy tradie and the six-pack and the dog, and you can see the wives nodding in the background because they know fine well. And You can see. It normally starts out with the old boys sitting like this, like, oh, what's this young buck going to tell me? And then by the end of it, they're like nodding. Like I had that recently at one. I was quite surprised because it was all like CEOs and like the heads of companies, and some of them are at points in life where they don't really care about who's on their site, and you're going to get that everywhere, but you do get some of them who will come up to you and go, I really appreciate that. Like, will you come out to site, or you come out to the factory and chat to the lads? And I know there's a few of them. You'll normally find that there's one or two in the crowd who they know have mental health issues, or they have anger issues, or frustrate. They're quick to blow up, but they don't want to approach them individually. So they'll get you in to do like a group talk. And then what I normally do is say, like, if anyone wants to talk further, like, here's my cards, or get my number from your boss. Or I normally hand my cards out because some people don't like even going to their boss to say that they've got issues. And any conversations I have with them, it's kind of confidential. Like, I tell them that, like, when I talk to my coaching clients, if they come from their employer, I'm like, none of this goes back to your employer. Like, I'll check in with him and say, yeah, he's doing, this is what we've worked on, and this is where he's improving, but none of the stories, none of what's going on. I kind of, you have to have that when you're working with someone so closely on a one-to-one perspective. I tell the bosses, I'm like, you don't get to know any of this. Like, it's a confidentiality thing, just like it would be with a doctor or a psychologist. Like, I'm not one of them. However, I do think like the honest conversations needs to be kept in-house, because it's the only way. And I say that to my clients too. I'm like, you need to be open and honest with me so that I can help you get the best outcome. If you're lying about what's going on for you, or if you're lying about, what you did, most coaches are like that. Like, they want to get the best outcome for their clients. And you can tell sometimes when people are bullshitting.
Yeah.
Because, you can just tell. Other times, some people but it's at their detriment. Like, I can only help work with what they're telling me. I don't have a crystal ball to see what they're doing once we get off the call, or once we're not face to face. So it varies depending on what the crowd is.
Mm-hmm. I bet you've gained a pretty great network through doing this, or at least an interesting. Have you found yourself being surprised sometimes with the conversations you're having with certain people?
Yeah. So I have found myself in some strange rooms. Let's put it that way. So the first, when I did the Tafe out at Meadowbank, it was an apprentice safety and health and safety day, and I was told it was four half-an-hour rounds of speech. I've got like a half-hour, 45-minute presentation that they do. And they booked me in for four different slots. So I just presumed it was going to be like, one would be painters, one would be plumbers, one would be chippies and brickies and whatever. And so I went to the room, big auditorium, ready to speak, and the room starts to fill up with female Afghan refugees with hijabs and full clams. I'm like, these definitely aren't tradies. I'm like, what's going on here? And I said to the guy who's organised, I was like, are we in the right room? Are they in the right room? He's like, oh yeah, the English language school heard that there was a mental health talk and they wanted to get these girls in here. I'm like, well, they're like, can you talk to them? I was like, it won't be trade related. And he's like, yeah, I know, but
it'll be in English.
I was like, I can change it. Like, I can I adapt it quickly on my feet, because realistically, personal development, health, wellness, resilience can be applicable. But he's like, maybe don't talk about suicide because of where they've come from, like Afghan and all the stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. So yeah, completely threw me. So I started the conversation anyway, and I went through it. And yeah, at the end of it, a few of them come up to me and they're like, oh, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And then after it, I got some emails from the head of the English department saying how the girls raved about it. And I think from them, their take on it was they were thrown by a man talking to them and helping them like improve themselves and tell them that they can do anything that they want to do if they change their mindset and they really want to, because obviously they've come from Afghanistan where they're like almost a second-class citizen. So that was one of the strange rooms that I've been in, sure. But I was like, I'm here now. I'm not going to run away from them. I was like, I'll just change the subject. So that one, and then I went to a networking event, and it was, so there's a charity in the UK called Lighthouse Charity, and they support an initiative called Make It Visible, and it's what I want to do here. So it's 4 or 5 lads in marked up transit Ford vans, and they go around sites doing site presentations and talks and handing out leaflets, and I want to do that here. So I found out that there's a Lighthouse Charity Australia here in Sydney, so I was like, sweet. Went and googled them, found out they were having a networking event in the city. I was like, done. Didn't even look at what it was about. I was like, I just want to get in the room, find who I need to talk to. So I went in, put it in. It was in like one of the Barangaroo towers. So I was like, oh, fancy establishment, sweet. Went and rocked up. It was like lawyers and barristers in construction. I was like, I walked into the room. Luckily, I went suit and tie. I went booted and suited.
Yeah.
I walked into the room, but it was like barristers, judges, lawmakers, and I was like, okay, like sitting down. It was like a 45-minute presentation from some like QC and construction law and administration. I was like, I didn't even understand a word this lad said the whole time. So then they do the breakout point and you start talking to people and they're like, oh, who are you? And I just said, no, I'm a tradesman, I'm a coach, I'm trying to help tradies, I'm trying to find the right person in this room to talk to because this is what I want to do. And I eventually found the people who do what they need to do, and they were like, we're not sure that we can help you. I think we're slightly different. But I still had the mental health conversation with a lot of them. And the guy who was on stage talking was like some QC barrister, was like 60, 70 years old. And even he said, he's like, I wish I had somebody like you 40 or 50 years ago to help me with my mental health. That's what these young people need. And I spoke to 3 or 4 young lads and I said, what do you guys do for your mental health? They're like, oh, yeah, we're all good. Not typical, like, beat around the bush. And I was like, you guys have an EWP, like an employees wellness program? Like, oh, yeah, we've got that. Yeah. I'm like, anybody ever use it? Oh, no. I'm like, maybe start using it, boys. Like, one of them was just about to have a kid. One of them had a kid, I think, and the other one was still just like living at home with his mum. But I was like, just make sure you use it. I handed out my cards to them. But yeah, I come away and I was like, that's not a room I should have been in. Like, I did not have the right to. Well, I did have the right to be in that room because my heart, like my purpose was in the right place. But like 2 different ends of the spectrum when it comes to construction.
Definitely.
Other than that, the rest of them have all either been what I thought I was going to. But yeah, those 2 are probably the first. And I dare say there'll probably be many more because, and anytime something comes up, I'm always throwing my hand up to get in, get my message out, find out who's in the room. Like, because there's, unfortunately, I need a lot of funding to do the things that I want to do. And I wasn't blessed with an aunt with lots of money or a granny or granddad with open purse strings. So yeah, I'm trying to find the right people who, 1, know my message or can feel my message, 2, have a affinity with trying to help people in construction. But unfortunately, I've yet to find them yet.
Yeah.
I'll keep going until I do.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, but Rome wasn't built in a day. And
This is true.
You're being so proactive with it as well. Like, one of my goals in life is just to constantly meet interesting people. It's like, so there is a little bit of, not, I wouldn't say envy, but it's more like a boost in like, I need to start putting myself out there more, having these conversations with people. Like, it's so awesome to see. The thing I was referencing earlier, which was what I think that we might need, and I've been thinking about it a lot for the last like 5 years or so, because I think when I did my apprenticeship, I would consider myself to be very lucky. Like, I got through and made it into a position in my trade by the string of a hair. Like, I just...
What do you mean?
Like, I made a lot of irresponsible choices to end myself in a lot of, I'm going to call them negative situations. And there was only a couple things in my life that held me onto the right side of life. You know what I mean? Like, I could have easily fallen off the bandwagon pretty quickly.
Yep.
And I think I've noticed, being an older sibling, never having an older one myself, I was always looking for a mentor, an older brother, someone who I can just relate to, but also get advice off. You know,
Yep.
I had fight trainers and kickboxing instructors, and I always looked up to these guys. And I do find myself to have quite a lot of older mates who I did grow up like, let me hang out with you guys as well. And I think that that could be one thing that we're lacking inside of, might be all industries, but I'm going to say definitely inside refrigeration, inside construction, and some kind of big brother program. Where
Funny you should say that.
Yeah.
So I'm just about to start with as a coach with a company called Productivity Bootcamp. So they take school leavers and put them on an 8-week course before they get into construction. So rather than just leaving school and walking straight into a construction site and not knowing fucking what one end of a screwdriver to the other, they actually take them and they give them a taste of each trade. So they'll be doing like concrete, they'll be like laying the Rio, and they'll be concrete and slab, and then they'll be doing carpentry, and they'll be doing plumbing and whatever. But they also, they give them the times when to be there and kind of tell them what to expect. And I've approached them and said, like, what you're doing is amazing, is great. How about partnering up from a mental health perspective, because the 8 weeks that they're with you, they're in this bubble, they're on site, and then once they leave you, they go on to jobs, like they help them find apprenticeships. It's then when they go on to the next place where they might not have that support network or those mentors, that's when I'll check in with them, have a, whether it's a phone call every month for the first 12 months or whatever it may be, build up a rapport with them so that they can have those conversations, like, I've had a shitty day on site, this happened, and then that's what I kind of want to come in, because what they've implemented is great, but after those 8 weeks, the kids are out on their own, and they've got both male and female there, so it's great. They've got the whole mixed bag. So yeah, literally just about to start that Monday coming.
Yeah, nice.
Because you're right. There's unless you're lucky to get a really good tradesman, someone to work with, because I know a few of them are few and far between. Like, I know as a site manager, I've had to separate a few tradesmen and apprentices, because they were just treating them like shit. I even had a dad and son group on floor layers on one of my jobs in the city, where I had to pull the dad in and be like, you can't, he's my son. I was like, I don't give a fuck if he's your son. You're on our site, and we have a zero tolerance for bullying. And like, this guy was just, even as a workmate, it was bad. But as a father and son, the way he was treating him, I was like, that's just not on. And that's what he's doing here in front of us. So I can only imagine what it's like when this poor kid goes home. And the kid's on like 16, 17. I'm pretty sure he was on some sort of spectrum too. Like, he wasn't, he had something that he was just lacking in, and his old boy was just berating him. And I had to like step in and be like, no, it's not. Well, we've got an anti-bullying policy, but also you're a fucking prick. Stop speaking to your son like that. Yeah. And he arced up at me, and I picked up the phone and called his boss. And I said, I don't know if you've ever worked alongside these two. I said, but the way he speaks to his son is absolutely disgusting. I said, I'm not having it on my site. And then, so I've seen that a few times. So it definitely, we could do with a mentor and Big Brother program. So I'm hoping that this one that we do will be like a pilot to then push on, because I'd like to get Western Sydney Uni involved and do a research piece on one cohort with me and one cohort without, and then get the differences at the end, because they're teaching them the trade skills, but no one's teaching them life skills. And a lot of these guys and girls are coming from school because they've left school because the teachers are telling them that they're stupid and they don't know how to learn properly. So they're leaving thinking that they've got nothing like in the world, and trade's the only option. And it's not actually the case. They just learn differently. So yeah, I'm hoping that with implementing that we have the new generation of trades who are actually not only are they skill trained, but they're emotionally and kind of life trained per se. Because
because I don't have the experience of obviously to have like all these years working inside of the workforce, and I consider myself to still be young in a way where I haven't got as much experience as most of the people I interact with, especially on site. But I'm very close to that bracket in which I was when I was still in TAFE. So I have a very strong memory when it comes to what my mindset was like just in the last few years. And I know that I think having a job and holding through my apprenticeship and getting me through was one of the key foundations I had in my life to help me from here on out. Yeah. If anything, to be honest, the decisions I was making outside of TAFE were the ones, outside of work, were the ones that were pulling me close to losing my job many, many times so far in my career. And if I had have just had someone to just, relate to in a way where, I understand having fun's still okay to have fun, but when to be taking it too far, these kind of things, I think that's mental health in a way as well, because you're not really thinking about the impact you're having on your life. You're just doing things without thinking about them. Yeah. So if there was any program, I'd love to be someone, even if it was at TAFE, where there could be a guy who was recommended for a certain amount of kids, who have gone through that trade in particular. They could do it across all of them. Yeah. And then they have an older guy who they can just call and just ask advice to, or he can come in and just give a speech about things like that. I think a Big Brother program is super, super important, because it's hard to keep an apprenticeship, if I'm going to be real. Like, you have to have thick skin.
You definitely, there's a whole load of variables that you need. And for me, if it wasn't having my dad telling me all those years ago, like, just stick at it and get a trade. If you don't have someone like that in your corner, it's easy, like say, to go down different routes when you're outside a trade, whatever they may be. and it's easy to get, you know, other people who don't have a trade who will send you down the wrong path, and, you know, next thing you know, you're in jail and you think, fuck, I wish I'd listened to Tafe. And it's easily done. Like, you can see why so many kids could go down that route. But let's stay in touch, let's say that much. Because I do have something in the work with somebody else who's doing trade work at Tafe with the tradies. And we're trying to implement it here in Sydney. And that is something out with his program, very much like the productivity bootcamp. It's like a mentorship after. So watch this space.
Yeah, cool.
I'll keep you in mind when it comes to it, because, like I say, there's many things I want to do, but I'm only a one-man band. So the more people with a similar mindset and the similar outlook and experiences to me doing what I want to do in the industry, is only going to benefit the industry. So
yeah, and I know a lot of guys, and I can see that it's kind of part of, I guess, becoming into your mid-20s in general. Like, you kind of have a bit of relation to the younger generation, and you also have a bit of empathy. It's like, oh yeah, been through that just the other day, mate. Like, I know what that's like. So I think it's good to have someone who can relate in such an easy way. You know what I mean? There might be guys who can relate to older generations. There might be guys who can relate to guys who have had a pretty easy growing up. You know what I mean? They come from a bit more of a well-off area, and then you need completely different guys to go speak to the guys who come from a bit more impoverished areas. Like, you have to have mentors and role models from all fields of life. So it's such an awesome thing that you're at least getting this ball rolling, because I can see it's a massive market that's got to be filled, you know. Yeah, and it's, everyone thinks you need to have your shit sorted out and you need to know everything to help somebody, but I had something the other day and it rings true. It's like, you only need to be 3 steps ahead of somebody, 3 steps improved ahead of somebody, to reach back down and pull them up. I thought, fuck, that's great. Like, because for so long the whole imposter syndrome kicked in with me, and I was like, oh, maybe, you know, what do I know? But then the more and more I kept having conversations with people, and they kind of backed out what I was saying about what was going on in the industry, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I need help. And it's that, like, I don't have everything sorted out. Like, my finances aren't as where I want them to be. Clearly, my health isn't where I want it to be. So, but I'm working towards it. And I, like you said, I've been through some experiences that I can give back down to somebody and be like, oh, I was there. I remember. This is how you might help you. So, yeah, like 3 steps forward, 3 steps improved of somebody, and then you can help them. So yeah, definitely. It's like I have my role models I look up online. Like, I got my Joe Rogans, and I look at people like Andrew Tate and some of the messages he says. I like my Jordan B. Petersons. I like these big figures, but sometimes it's just that relation where it's like, man, they're so far above that. Like, how many steps are there in between in order to get to these positions? But when I find someone around me, it's like, yes, bro. Like, let's go. Let's grind together. I'm only a few like that. You mentioned the podcast that you did before, like Nick Batar from the Better Project, who's awesome lad. He came and did the podcast. Shout out to him. When I did that podcast, it was like, yes, you've been doing it for a few more years longer than me. This is how many episodes you got. This is the growth you've got. It's not some millions of followers. It's thousands of followers. It's like, I'm so grateful you exist, because I now have the next blueprint.
Yeah, well, that's it. And the thing is, it's not giving up. As soon as you give up, you stop. You have no hope. Like, whether it's just one foot forward every single day, and keep going. And I say, a lot of people have said that to me, like, you know, we admire how you kept going. And I was like, it was never not an option. Like, I remember, so recently, last year, a mutual friend of me and my ex-wife took his own life. And I remember her saying to me, like, please, I know things are quite tough right now for me at the time, financially and with job and with trying to build this. She's like, please just never do that. And I was like, look, one, I would never do that to my girls. Like, my girls, I've got 3 daughters. I was like, they're my world. I would never leave them without a dad. But 2, my mission to do this for men and the impact I want to have is more than me. Like, I wouldn't do that if it came down to it, because it's, I just think there's just so much more to life than when people get stuck in their little pockets, and having just a few people around about you who are like the people that you mentioned there, Rogan, Tate. Like, I look up to a lot of them as well. Not everything 100%, but, you know, for the most part of what they've done, and Peterson and Justin Waller and all those people, you just need to find those people in your own, because they were like Justin Waller, for instance. He's a tradie. He was a sheet metal worker, a steel guy. You all have to start somewhere, but it comes back to that community and that brotherhood of, like we spoke before about having like the podcast community in our area here. Like it's great to have because everyone's done slightly different things, or everyone's slightly like, you know, I don't know how many podcasts you've had, but you've got an awesome setup here. Like I know so many people who are so far ahead and they literally just still do it on the laptop.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't get bogged down with thinking that other people are better than you. Just don't stop. Just keep going. Like I don't know if you listen to Chris Willex. Like I remember listening to him when he had like it was less than 500,000 followers at the time, and he was like, I can't even remember what episode he was on, but he was like, we just keep turning up, him and the guy that he had at the time, and this is when they were still in the UK doing it. And look at him now, like he's massive. I've actually just saw yesterday, I signed up for it. He's coming to tour Australia.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I was like, I am there. Like I love his podcast. He's one of my favorite podcasts. But same thing, he just didn't stop. Just kept putting out. He's like, some days I don't even know what I'm going to talk about, but I just turn the screen on and we just go for it. Yeah. And you just don't stop. Like if you stop, that's the only time that you know that you can have rest days. You know, say rest, refocus, and repeat. But that time that you stop and just completely that's it. That's when you'll never get to where you want to go. And it's easy saying that when life starts kicking the balls, and you know, like you say, you've got a kid on the way, and you've got a missus, and you've got work, and you know, all of those things. But you just keep going. Yeah,
just keep going. That's my mentality. It's just. I believe, and I say it on most podcasts, that if you try your hardest and you take risks, you will get there in the end. Yeah. You just can't stop. You just have to keep going. I believe that everyone will get to any goal and destination if they do not quit.
Yeah. It might not be exactly where you want to be. It might not be like, you know, 100 million, $1,000 or whatever, but you'll still be on some form of what it was. And the thing is too, and I find this with coaching, what your goals are 12 months from now will be different to what they are from 3 years from now. And you might get to the goal of whatever you want and feel like, oh, is this it? And that's and that can be a thing. Like people can get to their goals and it's the journey is actually more impactful than the actual getting there. And they're like, fuck, is this like, now what do I do? And I've had that so many times, like from business people and like high up podcasts I've listened to where they're like, there's a term for it. I forget what it is, but they get to this big massive goal and they're like, now what? Now what do I do? Yeah. And it's like but be okay with that. Know that you might get to a point, or you might walk the whole way to something and you're like, you know what, I didn't even want this. I want something different. Or like this isn't what I thought it was going to be. It's not. I think if you don't look at it as a defeat or a loss or a negative, you just think it as a lesson. Like, okay, this is the work that I've done along the way. These are the lessons that I've learned. Okay, what do I need to change, pivot, move to get to the next one, or what do I need to repeat from this to get to the next stage? And I don't get bogged down with the little things. Each one is a win, whether it's a loss and you learn from it, a lesson or a blessing is something that I picked up along the way.
Yeah, I say that too. I say you don't take the loss, you take the lesson.
And if more people had that outlook on life, then things would be better. But unfortunately, it's a lot easier to look on the negative side of things than actually push yourself to look on the positives and the wins. And it's easy to put people down too. You get everyone has haters. As Joe Rogan says, don't read the comments, because everyone's doing better than you who actually knows nothing about you or ain't even doing anything. So that's you get that on all walks of life.
I took that advice with first day I started the podcast, and I appreciate if everyone comments on it, but trust me, the messages and the phone calls go a lot further because I've never read one yet. Yeah. I will not read. I don't know how many I get. I don't know. To be honest, I don't read them on Instagram. I don't read them on Facebook. I just respond to messages and I answer phone calls. That's all.
I don't know who said it, but you'll never find a hater doing better than you. And it's true.
Yeah, well, hate comes from below. Yeah. So there's a couple more things I wanted to talk to you about just real quickly before, because it has pretty much hit the end of the podcast, but I don't want to go without asking you two things. First one though is more of a statement, and that's I heard this quote about purpose, and it said it read something along the lines of, to find your purpose, if you're looking for one, is find something you're good at, or at least find something you're interested in, and then get better at it until the point in which you're good at it. Then spend your time helping others become interested and good at that thing. And
I like that.
It kind of sounds like your journey so far too.
That definitely sounds a lot like me. Yeah, because I know I'm not 100% where I want to be. Like even me myself, like I know there's a lot of things I still want to work on, but I think what I've learned along the way is definitely I'm going to get better at that and then improve that. even just my messaging, like even just getting across what I actually want to do to help people and like help men in construction and actually get that message down. The more and more I do talks like this and podcasts, I find it kind of it tweaks it a little. But yeah, I like that. It's definitely I would definitely say that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, because that's purpose is, it's an important thing. It's such a powerful thing, and I think everyone needs to at least don't know what their purpose is, but just be actively looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting your ass off the couch, or getting, having a reason to get up out of bed in the morning, whether that's going to work or whether that's working on something. Like my premise, my coaching is called Hustle Talk Coaching, and I have this big premise of hustle to happiness. And it's not like work, go. It's constantly working on something, whether it's your job, yourself, your relationship, relationship with you, your wife, your kids, those around you. Just working towards being happy, because being miserable is easy, whereas you actually have to work on being happy and seeing the happy, the grateful things in life, and it makes everything more worthwhile when you do.
Yeah, beautiful. I've got 2 more questions. And the one I wanted to know, and I only knew this by stalking through your Instagram, and I went pretty far back. I like to do a little bit of research, but you're a big family man. I can see that your daughters are so important in your life.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty certain, I just have this odd feeling that I'm going to have a daughter for my firstborn, which is funny because I've been saying this and I mean this. I'm going to have 6 boys. That's what I'm going to have in my life.
Yeah.
And as many girls it takes, I'm going to keep having until I have 6 boys.
Good luck. I hope you get there.
Yeah. So do you have any advice when it comes to having a daughter? What's like, it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be small, it doesn't have to be short or long, but any advice for having daughters?
Like you, I always wanted a son. So when my first daughter come along, I hoped that the second one would be a son, but she obviously wasn't. And then my wife didn't want to have any more, and I was adamant I wanted a son, so I kept pushing for the third one, and then she ended up being a girl, and I was like, I think I just have to take this, because I'm going to have 3 girls. So now I have a dog, a boy dog. So that's my win. I'll take it as that.
Yeah.
But advice. One thing I am learning, and my parenting has definitely changed since I've had kids. Like, I'm definitely nowhere near the parent I had planned to be, which is good. I grew up with quite an authoritarian. My old boy was in the British Army, so everything was very structured and smacked and shouted at, and I just thought that's how you bring up kids. But the one thing, being the father of 3 girls, I have learned that they're the little ones. They don't know everything, and although it's frustrating having to repeat yourself to them and having to say the same things and do the same things, I had somebody say that when you shout at a little one and they're looking at you, look at their hands, look at those tiny little hands, those tiny little fingers, and it reminds you that they don't know it all. It's up to you to show them, and that was huge for me, because I don't know. It's when you have them one-on-one. So like when you're not sharing the load, it becomes different. Like the way that I wanted to parent was different to how my wife wanted to parent. So we were always back and forth. Whereas now that I have them on my own, I can get to kind of parent my own way, and it's understanding, especially when they're younger. They don't know everything, and they're relying on you to show them the way, and just don't be quick to anger, because that's where I used to be, and I used to see the fear in their eyes when I'd shout at them, and their little lip would quiver. And I heard somebody say, "Look at their little hands," and for some reason that just makes me slow everything down, and I don't get half as angry with them. I'm patient with them. They are little humans. They're my little humans. I love them. They drive me fucking wild majority of the time. So like by the time it gets to the Friday when they go back to their mum, I can't wait to give them back. I need a piece. But then by the time that they're ready to come back to me, I miss them like hell. So it's a roller coaster ride. I'll say that much with the emotions. But if you can get it in your mind that they're just the little humans and you're the adult, that's hopefully put you in good stead.
Good advice. Great advice. I love that. Just, to be honest, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that, especially with my staff kid. They say like, "Yeah, look at his little hands," because I find myself rousing a little bit. It does suck, but I just have to. To be honest, it's a bit easier coming from role where it's like I kind of get to step back and not rouse sometimes, where it's like,
when
it's my job.
So I'm lucky now that I haven't said I always want a son. So my new partner, she has a 14-year-old boy. Me and him have a really great relationship. So I do get to fill that son void a little bit. But yeah, it's a different dynamic when they're your own kid.
Yeah.
Especially when you think that when you're out in public, and a lot of people will look at my girls and like at Bootcamp Hill shops. If you're ever at Bootcamp Hill shops and you see the single dad with the 3 blonde kids, you'll know us a mile away, because my 3, they're always running around and singing and dancing and skipping, and people always look at them like googly eyed and they're like, oh, they're so cute. I'm like, you want to take them for an hour? I'll come back. I don't mind. Like, I'll come back for an hour. But yeah, when it's your own, it's definitely slightly different. But I'd say by the sounds of it, you've had a good heads up. So when your own does come along.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of a good heads up. It's been a nice little demo to the game. It's been pretty cool. The final question I want to ask you, and I do hate getting to the final question because I kind of just wish I could just yarn for the rest of the day, but there's only a certain amount of hours people are willing to listen to. It's the same question I do ask everyone that comes on, and I started asking the question a lot more when I did lose my best mate those years ago, and everyone has a different answer every single time I ask the question, and it's pretty awesome that we've been able to have such a long, strong conversation about this topic of mental health. Yep. So I was just curious to what your answer would be. If someone came to you because they were feeling depressed, mostly because they were lost, what would you say to that person?
So I said this at a talk one time and it came out of nowhere, and I think it hit the room the way I meant it to. If you're in a place where you want to take your own life, because you think it's too hard, or you're a burden on somebody, or you want the pain to stop. I had 2 friends who had 2 kids. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and it was taken away from both of them through no fault of their own. One of them was killed by the cops, and one of them was anaphylactic shock, and they would give anything to have the next day with their kids. So I would say that if you are in that space, just think if you're given the opportunity that somebody else wasn't, and you get the choice to live your life, whereas they didn't. It was taken away from them. And it can be quite harsh, but it hits home, because someone would rather pick up the phone and hear that you're going through something than pick up the phone and hear that you are not here. Because I've had that, and that's a shitty phone call to take. So yeah, if you are going through something, just tell somebody.
Yeah, beautiful advice. I love that question, because everyone's got a different perspective, but it all comes down to the moral standpoint of like, just don't, above all, just it's the most selfish act a person can make, which is a shame, because it comes from such a selfless place of not insecurity, but secludedness.
Yeah, I used to think it was a really selfish thing, and I used to say that quite a bit, and then I started to have a conversation with suicide survivors. I was actually on a podcast last week with a guy in the UK, and he survived twice. And what he told me was the voices in your head tell you to do it. And it's not like, oh, I'm crazy voices. It's, you're not worth it. People will be better without you. And he's like, and that's all you believe. You can't see sense. You can't see reasoning. And I think that's why so many people do it. And I don't know what the magic button is to fix that. But yeah, I think most people would rather have the burden of helping you than the burden that you think you're taking away from them by not being here.
I see it like a snake. I kind of call it the suicide snake. I see all these things as snakes, like depression and anxiety and things, but the suicide snake kind of just swimming through our societies at all times, and it's just waiting till it grabs a hold of a certain person and then do its thing with that person and then continue to start swimming again. And I think that as long as we are all aware and we talk about the fact that this snake exists, obviously metaphorically, then we're able to, 1, be able to fight it when it comes our way, and 2, defend it from coming our way in the first place. It's about building that armor and making sure that you're not necessarily impenetrable from anything that can come your way, but at least have the tools in which you need to fight against it when it does come.
Yeah, one thing I learned from doing the suicide prevention, the Mates in Construction Connectors course, is the amount of people who actually can't physically verbalize the words, are you thinking of harming yourself or are you thinking of committing suicide? And not that it's probably something that you really want to practice, but it's a good thing to be able to say to somebody, especially if it's somebody you love. Like I've had to ask on a handful of occasions people in my life, so it didn't come across as, and I didn't actually even realize it until I saw the people in the room like well up and not physically be able to say it because I never have. But it's being comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations with people that could save their life. And it's not everyone can do it, and it's not easy, but if you can at least point them in the right direction of someone and those services, and I don't know what the answer is. If I wish that it's happening so often that there's clearly something.
Yeah. Clearly something wrong.
Yeah, and I just, as I say, when I spoke to the professor at Western Sydney Uni, they just spent 18 months doing a research piece with mates in construction. And I said, look, what is the defining factor that are guys? Like, what is it? Like, I don't really care about the statistics of how many and how often. I said, I kind of know all of that. I says, but for me, it's just like, how can I help somebody not do that? Like, what's the defining factor? And he's like, we don't know. We still to this day don't know what it is, other than survivors telling us that they wanted the hurt to stop in their head, in their heart, and they felt like they were a burden on people.
Yeah, well then it's that snake then, and we just need to create as many tools and weapons as we can to fight it, in our own heads and with each other at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a help starts with a simple conversation. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've loved this whole podcast. I've loved the fact that you've came and done it with me. I couldn't be more appreciative of it.
Anytime.
I definitely will be hopefully doing one again in the future with you. I definitely want to stay in contact with this Big Brother Tafe program, or anything that you have in mind in the future, just to at least be able to give back and say thanks to the universe for at least getting me to the position I'm in today. And I'd love to be able to be there for someone else if they can look up to me.
We definitely need more people like you and me in our trade, people who are doing better and want to give back. So yeah, definitely I'll be in touch when the time is right.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, cool. Well, as I said, dude, thank you very, very much. It's been a lovely, long, probably 2-hour podcast. So,
sorry, brother. No, I really appreciate it. Anytime.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, well, for everyone listening, thank you for making it to the end of the episode. It's been an awesome week this week, and there'll be another one next week. That's all right.
Shawty catch a vibe, yeah, I had to put her on. Bought a two-seater, yeah, we heading for the sun. Shawty got my high, I ain't tripping for the funds. Yeah, I won't start, I ain't tripping, I'm a stunt.